Do you feel like reading music takes a lot of your practice time? Does it sometimes feel that you're moving so slowly that you can't see when you will be able to play the whole piece? Have you ever read a piece of music, looked at one bit, got it ready, moved on to another, then tried to come back to the first one and felt like you have to start all over again? And you wonder if it will always feel like that? If you answered yes to any of these questions, this episode is for you. My name is Zuzanna and I'm a harpist and a harp teacher. I hear from a lot of harp players who say that reading music is a big challenge. Sometimes you wonder, why is it so hard? Is there an easier way? And maybe even, is it possible that it's just you that don't have the talent, the skill or whatever else it takes and you will never learn how to do it? If you're there right now, take a deep breath. You're definitely not alone and I can assure you that there's nothing wrong with you. Reading music is hard, and I think that with some of the unique challenges of the harp, there are some reasons why for us it may be less accessible compared to other instruments. However, there are some things that you can do, and in this video I will share some of my tips that you can try right away. The harp playing technique is perhaps not the most straightforward. Even for someone who had some previous experience with reading music on another instrument and maybe doesn't have to spend so much time working out the notes, managing the harp technique can be still challenging. You need to keep thinking about the correct hand position, planning where to place your fingers, and after the movement remember to close your fingers and bend the thumb. That's already a lot to think about. And if you now add to this list reading music, sometimes it can all feel a bit overwhelming. But of course, you want to read music. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be watching this video. You want to be able to take advantage of the tutorial books available, learn to play the pieces that are out there, and not have to rely on someone playing the music to you every time you learn something new. So, how can you manage to make it all work together? Let's have a look at what needs to happen in order for you to read music fluently. Learning to read music is very similar to learning how to read books in your spoken language. And even if you don't remember exactly how this went for you, you would probably agree with me that among the first words that you were learning, you would be more likely to find something like cat, bed, mat, and you're a bit less likely to look at words like algorithm or anything like that. And this is because when you learn to read, you start with just a handful of letters and sounds that you learn to recognize first. Then you slowly put them together into some simple words that you may already be familiar with, and you may even be able to build complete but simple sentences with them, like a cat on a mat. But you do spend quite a lot of time on these first few letters and getting used to them before you introduce any others. And when you do get a new letter, first, it's likely to be just one letter at a time, and second, you will get a lot of exposure to this letter before getting to any others. For example, the picture of the letter will be hanging on the classroom wall for a whole week, or you will be learning a lot of words which contain this letter, and maybe you will also be trying to come up with a sentence which uses as many of these words as possible, and so on and so on. And it's likely that at the beginning the words with the new letter will not come to you as easily as the ones you learned before, but gradually you will learn to recognize them too. Maybe when another new letter is introduced, you will still need to go back and revise the previous one, but in general, the more time you spend on them, the more easy it will be to recognize them. Hope you forgive me this nursery-related off-topic, but I think many of us forget how much time does it actually take for a new skill to sink in. And when you think about reading music and compare it to learning to read a written language, there are so many things that actually make reading music a lot more complex. For one, while letters in English alphabet differ between capital and small, in music, depending on the rhythm, you may get a lot more different shapes for the same note. And rhythm also means that some maths and counting is required. On top of you recognizing the pitch, you need to know what rhythmic value it represents and be very precise about how long each note lasts. Then there are a few more harp-specific challenges, among others the same notes that can be played using different fingers, so you either need to watch out for the number written above the music or, something even more tricky, work out the fingering on your own. And then the second big challenge, on the harp we use two staves for reading the parts of the left and the right hand. And although there is a connection between them and they are not as disjointed as it may seem at first, sometimes they may feel like two separate entities and as if you were reading two different lines of text at the same time. This is all a lot to take in at once, and I think sometimes we don't give ourselves the permission to go slowly and focus on just a few things at a time, instead of trying to take it in all at once. So how can you slow things down a little bit and make sure that you're still making progress reading music while avoiding the dreaded sense of overwhelm? Here are a few tips for you. Make a commitment to set aside a portion of your practice time to be spent entirely on reading music. It can be as short as 5 minutes, but as with everything else on the harp, what matters is the consistency. Of course, when we practice, we want to get to play the pieces, and especially if you're short on time, it may feel like this extra time spent on reading music is eating up your precious practice time. But think of it as an investment. Same as we put aside a little bit of money throughout the year in order to get something nice or go on holiday, think of it as putting these little chunks of time aside and putting them into your practice bank. I promise it will pay off. When it comes to the music that you can use for your practice, try to go for the easiest pieces and exercises that you can find. Chances are that you are already rather familiar with the first few exercises and pieces that you have played at the beginning, and they will only be mildly useful as music reading exercises. But try to see if there are any pieces in your books that you skipped at the beginning and try to give them a go. Or even better, find a harp beginner book that is completely new to you and use the pieces in the first sections as music reading exercises. If I were to recommend one beginner book that is a really great choice, I would suggest that you get Play the Harp with Charlie the Kitten. This book is a children's book, but it follows the great approach of adding only a few notes at a time and introducing them gradually, which is perfect when you want to focus on just one little chunk of knowledge at a time. If you're wondering whether you can use the pieces that you're already working on as practice material, let me answer this question in the next point, where I'm talking about the technique. During your dedicated reading time, focus on using the simplest playing technique that is available to you. For example, playing only with your second, which is index finger. That's already a great thing. This means that you can focus on the most important task, which is right in front of you, looking at a note and deciding which string it corresponds to, and then going right to that string with your second finger. This lets you avoid processing all the extra questions like, which finger should I use? How many fingers do I put on? Shall I connect with the next group or come off? And so on and so on. We've got a lot of that on the harp. Of course, if you see a pattern that you immediately recognize, for example, 3 notes C, D, E, and the first thing that comes to your mind is to place a group of 3 fingers, that's absolutely fine. But also, there is nothing wrong with going first with your second finger to the C, then taking some time to recognize that the next note is D and going there with the second finger, and finally the E. While you are probably already working on some pieces where you're applying various techniques and these pieces are at various stages of progression, they may not be always the best material for reading music. With new pieces, you want to make sure that you use correct fingering from the beginning, and that adds an extra thing to focus on when you're learning to read music. So I would suggest that you stick to simple pieces and exercises in your dedicated reading music time. What you learn there will absolutely transfer to the pieces that you're working on, but what you want to avoid is the feeling of frustration when you're trying to do too many things at once and it's not working as well as you think it should. Have a quick overview of what you know already. Of course, if you're an absolute beginner, you will likely be starting from the very beginning and getting to know your middle C. But as soon as you can recognize this very characteristic note with a line in the middle, add it to your books. Then, see if you can recognize the note next to that, the D. Or maybe for some reason you find it very easy to tell the first note in the lowest treble clef, which is F. Celebrate these achievements, however small, because once they are there, you can add more layers to build on top of them. If you spot a note that is somewhat elusive, let's say that for some reason you have trouble recognizing the D next to the middle C that we've seen earlier in the video. Instead of giving yourself a hard time and saying things like, this is hopeless, I should have known it by now, how am I ever going to move on? Stop right there and instead say, that's interesting. What can I do this week to focus more on this one note? And just like in the nursery there may have been a letter of the week, maybe make this sound your note of the week. You can print it out and keep somewhere you look at often, like your music stand or your wallet, or put it on sticky notes around the house, or maybe use manuscript paper to draw it a few times. Look out for this note in the simple exercises you're using for your dedicated music reading time, as well as the pieces that you're working on at the moment. Maybe highlight it both in the exercises and the pieces using one chosen color, or use sticky tabs that you can remove later. Be as creative as possible when you're focusing on your highlight of the week. Let me know in the comments, what is it that you're struggling with when reading music on the harp? Do you think that you may be trying to do too much? And if so, which of my tips are you going to try first? If you want to learn more about reading music on the harp, make sure to check out the link in the description below, as I've got something special for you. Also, make sure to subscribe to get notified about new videos. I will see you here next week for another episode of the Coffee Break Harp. Take care for now. Bye!